When you think of Aruba, you probably imagine gorgeous white sand beaches, turquoise waters, and clear blue skies. But is that all there is to the island? On our recent trip to Aruba, we decided to take a break from the beaches and explore what lies just off the beaten path. And what we found surprised us.
Another round will bring you down. Another round won't save you now.
Welcome to the station. What we're gonna do right now is we're gonna go down the ladder.
We took a UTV tour with Fofoti Tours. If you're looking for an in-depth historical tour of Aruba, this probably isn't the best choice. But it is an effective way to explore the island's rugged landscape. Our first stop was at the cave pool at Boca Majos. We actually came here on our very first trip to Aruba back in 2016. It was fun to swim here, but Ella, who was only 4 years old back then, was a little bit freaked out by the fish in the water.
Did you see any fishies? Yeah. How big was it? Show me. Really?
Many people are surprised to find that much of Aruba actually looks like this. Most islands in the Caribbean have lush vegetation and humid climates, but Aruba is a dry, almost arid island. While many Caribbean islands get an average of 40 to 50 inches of rain per year, Aruba typically gets less than 15 inches per year. It's also one of the few Caribbean islands that's south of the hurricane belt, which means that direct hits from hurricanes are rare. This unique microclimate has had a profound impact on Aruba's history. For one thing, Aruba's soil wasn't suited to large-scale agriculture, so European colonizers never established the big plantations that were common on other Caribbean islands like Jamaica or Nevis. So Aruba is unusual in that it never had a significant population of enslaved Africans. In fact, early Spanish explorers referred to Aruba as Isla Inutil, or the worthless island, because it didn't have the rich gold and silver resources that they found in other parts of the Americas. The indigenous people of Aruba were the Caquetío, and they are thought to have sailed over from northwestern Venezuela to settle the island. When the Spanish arrived in Aruba, they enslaved almost the entire native population and shipped them to work in the copper and gold mines on Hispaniola, the island that is now Haiti and the Dominican Republic. Many Caquetío were eventually allowed to return to Aruba, and for many centuries the island was pretty much a sleepy enclave of pastoral farmers and fishermen. But in 1824, everything changed when gold was discovered in Aruba. More than 3 million pounds of gold was extracted during the Aruba gold rush, until the supply finally ran out in 1916. The gold mill at Bushiribana is where much of this gold was processed. The ruins of the gold mill still stand, just steps from the cave pool at Boca Majos. And on our first trip to Aruba, we got to explore this area. One thing we love to do when we travel is to meet locals so that we can learn more about what it's like to live in a place rather than to simply visit as a tourist. On this trip, we linked up with Hyro, an Aruba local who's also a YouTuber. His channel is called Let's Go with Hyro. He has a ton of great videos on things to do in Aruba, but he also documents his own travels to countries like Ecuador, Cuba, Taiwan, and Japan. From Hyro, we learned that some locals are actually trying to limit the number of ATV and UTV tours.
There is an ongoing issue with the ATV and UTV, which is damaging our nature. That's also, like a long debate that I'm sure at some point we are going to move forward and eliminating those vehicles, even though they're popular tours they make here on the island. I mean, it's nice to think about it, but when even for me, going home from work or something like that, and I see like 20 of them go by, I say, okay, it's good for the business, but then for nature, I mean, if we really sit down and think about it, we should at least limit that in some way.
I actually wasn't aware of the environmental impact of ATVs and UTVs before chatting with Hyro, so it's definitely something we'll be more conscious of on future trips. Thankfully, there's a more eco-friendly option you can use to explore the island, and that is on horseback. Notorious Ranch was only a 5-minute drive from our resort, but it felt like we were transported to the middle of the Old West. Hyro joined us for this tour, and he managed to operate his drone while on horseback. It was pretty incredible. I've never seen a landscape like this before, with literal forests of cacti. After following the path through the cacti, we ended up along the coastline. It's hard to describe the rugged beauty of this landscape. I could have spent hours watching the waves crash against the jagged rocks. Lucky, the ranch dog who came along with us on our ride was living his best life, enjoying the spray of the seawater on his face. If you plan on doing this tour, it's best to wear pants or leggings to cover your legs as you do come up close to the brush. Rancho Notorious offers tours for advanced riders where you're able to gallop, so if you're an experienced rider, that's a great option. Our guide Nestor was fantastic. Even though this was a beginner's tour, he actually got us to do a little galloping. You can tell that Nestor is really passionate about horses and he takes great care of them. And overall, he just made this a great experience for us. One of the reasons Aruba has the highest repeat visitor rate among the Caribbean islands is because of the weather. It hardly ever rains, which means that you can book a trip to Aruba even in the middle of hurricane season without worrying about rain ruining your vacation. So with all that said, it was pretty exciting when this happened. Wow, we got in the car right on time. Apparently, on the rare occasions it does rain in Aruba, it really comes down. We weren't mad though, because we were on our way to a restaurant that often has a line out the door. The rain stopped as soon as we got there, but it drove the crowds away, so we didn't have a wait at all. Zeerover is a casual outdoor restaurant located on a fish pier. Zeerover means pirate in Dutch, and it's a nod to the period in the late 17th century when Aruba was a haven for the real-life pirates of the Caribbean. You order and pay first, then find a table, and they'll clean and cook the seafood fresh for you while you wait. Balashi is Aruba's most popular local beer, but in recent years, the same brewery has introduced a new beer called Magic Mango. Other than certain Belgian lambic beers, I'm not typically a fan of fruity beer, but this was pretty good, so definitely give it a try if you come to Aruba. So, is Zeerover worth standing in line for? Not really. But if you can get here at a time when there's no wait, let's say on a weekday, right when they open at 11 a.m., it's definitely a fun place to have an early lunch. Aruba's gold rush ended in 1916, but about a decade later, the island's economy was revived, this time by black gold. That is, oil. Aruba is located just 15 miles from the coast of oil-rich Venezuela, and for that reason, it became an attractive spot to build oil refineries. In 1929, the Lago refinery was opened near San Nicolas. Up until the 1970s, the refinery was one of the largest in the world, employing well over 8,000 people, or 16% of Aruba's population at that time. This helped grow San Nicolas into Aruba's second largest city, and it greatly increased the quality of life for all locals in Aruba. Even today, Aruba has one of the highest GDP per capita incomes in the Caribbean. Unfortunately, the oil refinery closed permanently in 1985, and since then, San Nicolas has experienced a bit of an economic downturn. But there are several urban revitalization efforts underway. One of the biggest is the Aruba Art Fair, first held in 2016. That year, 15 local and international street artists painted murals in downtown San Nicolas, and the number of murals have grown rapidly since then. You can actually book walking tours of the murals with Tito Bolivar, the founder of the art fair. It's a way to see a completely different side of Aruba. One unique site that Hyro took us to see was this coastal area full of wooden crosses. Turns out, this is Aruba's unofficial pet cemetery. Sean and Ella felt a bit sad thinking about all the puppies buried here, but this location has stunning views of the ocean. I can see why Aruba locals have been burying their beloved pets here for nearly 100 years. It's a beautiful, peaceful, final resting place. Okay, so we're at Passions on the Beach, which is one of Aruba's most romantic restaurants. But look who's here!
But you're the one who told us to leave. You dragged us out here.
So-
we didn't even want to leave.
This is a part of family
and then now
travel.
you're like, oh, John, I
part
hate
where
the
we
fact
go
that
like
you're
this?
here. Why did you force that?
We'll be like, why don't you guys sit over there? And we're gonna be romantic. Passions on the Beach is one of the more popular restaurants for tourists to Aruba. To be honest, the food could be better and the 80s saxophone music was super cheesy. But it's an absolutely stunning location and a beautiful place to watch the sunset. Restaurants in Aruba are booked far in advance these days, even though tourism hasn't completely rebounded yet. So if you're planning a trip here, try to book your dinner reservations as soon as you book your hotel. After the collapse of the oil refining industry in Aruba in the 1970s and 80s, the government decided to focus on tourism as a way to grow the economy. Today, 40% of Aruba's GDP comes from tourism, with a large chunk of that coming from the cruise industry. When the pandemic hit, the abrupt halt in tourism was devastating for the island's economy. Hyro has a video on his channel from April 2020 where he takes a walk down Palm Beach. It's remarkable to see the difference. Normally, Palm Beach looks like this. But in the middle of the pandemic, it looked like this. Still, Aruba is fortunate in that it was one of the first Caribbean countries to reopen its borders. For many destinations, getting a complete break during the pandemic from the overcrowding and pollution that tourism brings was really eye-opening. There's much greater awareness these days about the problems of over-tourism. And even though tourism in Aruba hasn't reached pre-pandemic levels yet, the conversation about over-tourism is already starting to happen.
Recently, the tourism board has started talking about that and comparing it to, let's say, 2019 and such. You do see it at some spot, at some beaches. It is actually crowded even now, and we are still in the pandemic. My personal opinion is that for now, maybe we'll have to kind of like deal with it, and along the way certainly start now working on ways to limit the tourism in the coming maybe couple of years.
Now, if it's your first visit to Aruba, then sure, spend lots of time on the island's famous beaches. Whether you opt for popular beaches like Baby Beach, Eagle Beach, Palm Beach, or if you go for beaches that are lesser known, like Mangel Beach on the southwestern coast of Aruba, you'll find soft white sand and beautiful crystal clear waters. But there's so much more to Aruba than its beaches.
The main thing, everybody comes for the beaches and the great weather that we have. But apart from that, we have so much more to offer. Like you can go in the culinary part, we have great restaurants, we have like history about the Indians that lived here. You can do hiking. Right now we don't, but normally we would have the carnival season, which is nice also. And I can keep continuing saying so many things, but it's more than you can see just the beaches, that's for sure.
Okay, if you'd like to watch in-depth reviews about Hyatt Regency Aruba and the Ritz-Carlton Aruba, which are the two resorts that we stayed at on this trip, I'll link those two below. If you'd like to find out why we're visiting 21 resorts in 2021, just click that video right there. If you haven't already, please subscribe and turn on notifications. And follow us on TikTok and Instagram at Top Flight Family. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.